video for our relationship talk. And we want to, in this discussion, right? This is our conclusion discussion for the year. And we have had a lot to say during the year when it comes to relationships. We have had a lot that we have experienced ourselves throughout the years when it comes to relationships. And being 18 years married, 19 years together, and with having to learn that the requirement, when you get so used to someone, right? And you have a requirement to be used to you. And I'm going to talk about the marriage vow specifically today in all its calmness and kindness. So I've been pregnant and I'm currently bleeding, and it's part of a miscarriage period and season. And I've been through it before many times, right? I've been through it 2020, I've been through it last year, and you don't get used to it, but you also don't tell yourself that you are now too old to have a baby. And you don't mentally go and sit down, and you don't also mentally challenge yourself through it. And I remember I was in 2020 in South Africa when it happened, right? And I was for a year there, and I had a lot of tension during the year. And I was also 6 months, I was 6 months at that time. And I had a lot throughout the year. And I didn't realize that when I got to South Africa, I was pregnant. And I was there, and then I learned that I experienced the process, and I was still somewhere, and then I was just starting to bleed. And I was not your periods, your menstruation, bleeding, and you know when it's something happening right in your womb. And I've experienced that. And the relationship vow that are sometimes challenged with so much, right? And they're getting used to you where you were so used to someone else. You are in marriage for 18 years. The marriage has been amazing. It's been crazy and chaotic also at times, but the vow to be committed to you, the person, individually, to your well-being, to where you find yourself at in your season, to realizing when emotionally a season, a marriage, a situation, when emotionally you are challenged and you are required to be fine with you, to be well, and to not go and tell yourself that the marriage is now 18 years, the miscarriage is this, and the amazingness of the familyness, but to make sure that if there's challenges during that season, that you find you fine as a person. And in that season, the vow is not that obligation that you have made to commit to someone else. In that season, the vow becomes the obligation that you and the person that you are with find yourselves fine, right? Mentally fine, physically fine, emotionally fine. And if there's anything that relates to challenging you in marriage, it is found that as a generation, as a woman, we have to learn to know when to let go. We have to learn to know when to step away from the marriage. You have to learn to know when not to emotionally kill yourself. We have to learn to know that we have an emotional generation of people and a generation of women that were ill and that had cancer. And South Africa has got, they've got the history of cancerous marriages, of New England also, right? They had a history of women who died because of cancer, of women in marriages that died because of cancer. My father himself died many years ago and he had cancer himself, right? It is that emotionally, when you are challenged in your house and when you are challenged in the marriage itself, and when the marriage are challenging one another, then as a young generation in our season, we have to learn to listen to what is fine for us in our season. Ribea Elise has to learn to listen to what is wellness for Ribea Elise, what we are at in our season. And that's what I want to talk about today. It is all the amazing things we can educate on marriages. We can paint the most glossy picture of marriages, but the amount of times that a married couple have to be in disagreement in house, not in disagreement even, but where a married couple have to be argumentative with one another in the house, is the amount of times that you have to count it on your fingers. I remember one Sunday I was doing the Sunday cooking, and me and Doreen was already arguing, and the aggression of when you are argumentative in your marriage and your wellness about that, it's sometimes are challenging you, the person. And we educate from in season, we say the marriage vow of 18 years, the amazing perfect picture, not the miscarriage, the reason, but the wellness response to you, the person. It's where you have to sometimes, as human beings, decide, is a divorce something that you need to consider in a circumstance like that? And then sometimes, I always say that if you can move away from a marriage that are sometimes challenging you, then do exactly that. Don't go and paint a perfect picture in the house and the husband treats you like nothing many times, and most of the times he's just quiet. And then the 18 years was 18 amazing years also, but within the amazing years, your wellness, there's a generation of women who was deceased in South Africa and they were only 60 years old. And there's so much concerning the 60 years old people. There is not only an argumentative marriage, but there is a lot of things happening in the world, right? And without all the things that are happening in the world, and that people sometimes are doing the one to the other. Nowadays, people give you medications as spite. Nowadays, married couples get married, and the husband are sent to go and marry the wife. So, because there's a tendency of a group of guys that marries women for a certain reason. And we find ourselves sometimes in these marriages without realizing that there's that group of people in the world, and the amazing team of people, and the only tendency is that there's a due date concerning certain marriages and concerning certain women in our generation. When we look upon how our generation are aggressed for so many reasons, but the obvious reason is someone tunes into all the people who look similar in the world, and they have a whole news channel about it, and Al Jazeera educates us about it, and Al Jazeera says, and everyone is looking for all the brother Richards in the world, and they are then wanting to chase Ribea, Elise also after that. And Ribea, Elise looks at the world, and Ribea says that under day, what is fine for me, the person, what the world educates one another. And that when you learn to respect the pureness of the vow, we've educated about that. You learn to respect what you are required to do in marriage, and your individual response to be protective of yourself and protective to the other in the marriage. But we have to learn to say that I'm going to be honest about the situation, that the pastoral leadership and way of preaching is now not exactly logical reasoning and thinking. That the pastor gets onto the pulpit these years, and they are everywhere to be seen, and they have the most amazing glossy clothes on, and they are amazingly everywhere, like in a Vogue photo that smiles. And then the next day people look and say, but is that really Ribea? And then they try to look at the lips. They don't even want to look at the teeth. They're only looking for the hair to look similar as in the photo. And they're looking for the hair color about that. And then they tend to chase one another around the world because they want the glossy relationship educations. They want Ribea to say that my 18 years is amazing. And this is Dorian Rhoda. And his color is amazingly bright, everyone, and he looks greatly perfect, and he's white in skin color. And the world wants to listen sometimes only to that, only to the pastor saying it. And then the world, I've mentioned in my podcast just now, and then the world is sometimes so crippled because the world wants to believe that the pastor saying it, and the perfect picture, and the most amazing restaurant dinner date, and the everything amazing is the most amazingness. And then you look at all the women and they look ill, and they look like they all have cancer, and they paint the most perfect picture. And so many women look so mentally challenged, and no one's saying it, and everyone is just painting and painting and pretending to not say it. And Ribea Elise is direct in saying that in that season, what is fine for you, the person, not what someone else wants you to say. I said in my podcast this morning, and I did the Wow Season podcast of the celebrities' opinion versus Ribea Elise's opinion. The celebrities' offers and Ribea Elise's directness. The celebrities, I have to listen to what is it that I'm acceptive to, that I accept upon myself, and that I know when to release, and what is it that I accept and walk toward. It is all of those things that on self next year we're going to educate about. That is the acceptiveness of our generation. Our generation has learned to believe everything that everyone tells. They go and paint exactly that, and they walk with it, and our generation finds themselves. Mama Anna said, and I have my brother who was in a train accident, and he's walking crippled, and he's not walking crippled because he's born crippled, but he's walking crippled because of generational arguments and aggressions that he found himself in when he was young, and he then was challenged in his youth, and his whole career changed, right? And 55, 54 years later, he's still educating to Ribea Elise about the crippleness of a generation, and the opinion that we sometimes take. When I have to find myself releasing my opinion out there, then I have to find myself fine with where I'm at in my season. It is that I can say 10,000 things in a minute, right? And I can say so much in a season, but the direct requirement and response is that when there's so much transformation generation, then who are you holding on to, right? When there's so much transformation about a perfect marriage vow, and how can Ribea educate the marriage vow, and if Ribea's lifestyle is like this, and then reality in that moment strikes and say, but the awokenness in our season is where's our generation crippled with the information, the management, the offices that are managed by a crippled leadership mindset, and the requirement to respond and be fine, and to be on a walk, a talk, a attitude education. And I do not negotiate my evoke education with anyone. And if the light goes off while I'm talking, and I'm going to switch the light off quickly, and then we continue on our day, and no one switched off, and everyone listens. And right, it is that season, and then our generation has to decide that the crippling of our generation and the disability of our generation. I live in a country where there's disability, right? In our generation currently, I've got so much happening in the hospitals. There's so much corruption and so much a requirement for someone to want to overrule someone else's opinion, someone to want to overrule Ribea Elise's household, someone who wants to overrule Ribea's finances on their day, someone who wants to overrule whether Ribea is going to be physically fine on their day. And that when the doctor said to Ribea, the mental challenge, the mental effect, then Ribea says to the doctor about the evoke that educates in a day. And the Ribea Elise didn't say it with words, but the way of reasoning is that the mental effect of my circumstance is not the physical appearance of the Ribea Elise. And so there's nothing mental about a miscarriage. There's nothing mental about the person that tells you that the world are crippled, the world are the world are oppressive, and the circumstances of oppression is where the Ribea Elise stands stable in a season and she's direct to say that mentally the effect is not painful because the emotional reaction is that requirement for every one of us to find ourselves fine the next second, to find ourselves in the awakeness of a next new day, in the amazingness of our seasons that we are at and required to be at in our generation. And therefore, I want to just I want to just motivate everyone for next year, because it's not easy when the word goes out and everyone runs with it and everyone wants to transform about the word that has gone out, right? It is that we need to know what is it about what someone is saying that I'm going to hold on, and what is it that I'm going to let go, right? Not who Ribea Elise in the amazing Vogue photo is, in the amazing photo that I've posted on South 2024, right? And South photo is exactly my lips, it's my cheekbones, it's my grandmama, it's my mama's face, it's everything about me, right? I've shared a photo of my grandmama just now on Sunday, on my Facebook purpose serving page. So it's exactly Ribea Elise, right? And exactly the person. And people sometimes Google in on you, and the message goes around the world, and the message says, but that's not the person in the photo. When they edit all my videos, when I do my live streams, and when I do my videos in the edit. And then in the self portrait, the Mona Lisa portrait, Ribea Elise is exactly the type of person. And people still want to tend to go and argue and want to run around with words about the person, Ribea Elise, rather than listening to the education in season. People want to go on. I'm going to switch the light off. I'm going to switch the light off again. People want to go on when the light goes like this, and then they run off, and then they look for the professional of the light to have to stay on in that moment. And Ribea Elise is, but the requirement is to listen and to not be receptive to the light going off and you run out about it. You listen and you allow yourself to know what to accept upon yourself and what to release. You know, when the celebrities educate, they educate from an office environment. Their office have become their daily life, right? For us, it's 40 hours a week from a Monday to a Friday. For the celebrity hours, it's every second of the day they have to be transformed into someone else. And they have to exactly give that character. I've mentioned this morning on my podcast that they don't even have a time, you know, to appreciate the season that they're in. And they can't even grab everything about their season because they have to transform into the perfect photo, the perfect outfit, the perfect this, the perfect way of standing, the perfect way of sitting, the perfect way of speaking, and the lights can't go up. And then they can't even sometimes hold on to the completeness of the season that they are being educated in, because there's so much of them that are required to just grab what humanity requires and to just educate it out there. And then they sometimes find themselves oppressed, right? And I agree sometimes with them and I disagree a lot sometimes with them. And then they find themselves so oppressed by the circumstance. And then Ribea says, but they are educating our generation needs to know how to listen to a celebrity, because I can say a lot of 10,000 things about them, but they do not necessarily say go and do the fake that they are doing. But sometimes Ribea says, don't go and then grab the fake and run with it, but listen to what they're educating. And if you don't listen properly, then don't go and complain about them, right? And I many times complain myself, and I have to release and I have to let go and I have to allow myself to listen again and to say that the fake is amazing, but who's Ribea Elise in the discussion? And if Ribea Elise can't listen and adapt to that is accepted to Ribea Elise, then Ribea Elise has to step away and has to listen to Ribea Elise versus the celebrity. The fakeness about it, that they have everything, but that they have so much that they sometimes are not holding on to in their day because they have to just hold on to what someone else requires them to hold on to. And whereas Ribea finds myself, in my opinion, it is that I have the opportunity to know that I have the completeness of my season in my day, and I can hold on to that, and I can release, and I can educate exactly in that I'm required to educate. And that is not difficult for our generation to not find themselves so easily bashing one another, and to have to learn to listen to what do we respond with when we listen to someone. I have many times blocked someone out of my page, and I'm not going to now again go through that season of saying that I had to block Malvina out, and I had to tell myself to listen to the Ribea Elise in my season without realizing that people are sometimes so much trying to oppress the Ribea Elise person. I had to say that this person I know from somewhere, but I have to block this person's education out of my day so that I can listen to what does Ribea Elise have to say in a season, and not what someone else requires Ribea Elise to say, right? You know, every post I post, and people go to Malvina's page, and then they say, oh, Malvina, I said that, and there's now the tendency in the education about that going on. Ribea Elise, and for that very reason, because I knew humanity was going to be like that. When I started my education on social media, I blocked every communication out from them, and I educated directly from my education room and from where I find myself at in my season, in my education required to educate. And that's where when people serve the world around with messages and people hate on one another about it, and then I say sometimes block the haters out, because we've got the opportunity to block our pages and to say that husband and boyfriend, amazingly the vow is amazing because I know you from somewhere and we have been in the marriage for 18 years, but sometimes we have to know to release, you know, and to say that this amazing friendship is amazing, but just wait there. My sister Antoinette always did that. She's got amazing friends, but she knows when to say that, you know what, friend, now you just be there and and no one knocks on my door, and no one asks where I'm at because I'm busy. And I say, then I visit her, and I say, I'm too late. But why don't you let that friend and that friend and that friend come and visit? And then it's like there's a season and a time for everything, you know. And in relationships, we have to learn to know when to hold on to the amazingness of the husband, the 18 years of it, and when the 18 years is sometimes challenging to the wellness about it. And that's why our generation has to appreciate all the seasons of marriage and relationships. It comes in all the seasons. It's educated through the spring season, through the summer season, through the winter season, through the autumn season, and in the amazingness of all of those seasons, the sound is so loud. And with all the loud sound, we have to know sometimes what to hold on to, when the wind is blowing, when the autumn leaf is like Ribea's outfit today, in so many different colors about it, the skin color of it, and the glossiness of it, and the lightness in the color, and in the amazingness of the autumn leaf, the loudness is the color of it for Ribea it is. Many people look at autumn in a different way, but I listen to the autumn season in a way that I listen to how is autumn season presented to our generation. How is autumn season presented to Ribea Elise? I listen very loudly to my seasons, and that's how I educate with about seasons. Is that I listen very loudly to the seasons, but it is not only listening in the loudness, but accepting and knowing what to hold on to, and knowing where we educate from and how we respond to ourselves when we are sometimes challenged. And I can sometimes be very harsh, yes, on myself. I can be harsh, and I can be firm, and I can be direct, but I'm not going to say that my harshness is not rudeness to myself, right? So it's good for me to say that I get harsh about how I reason sometimes and what I want to do and all that I say on social media. And sometimes we have to be conscious of our children that's growing up. And sometimes we have to also say it, and we cannot not say it. Because if my situation is that the world Googles into my household and I'm not on social media, or I'm not on my YouTube video, and I don't know that the world is Googling on my family line, on my mama Ananas, and the world don't know the Ribea Elise is a Vogue person, and Ribea Elise is a Vogue is the personality, it's the face, it's the glossiness, it's the inner reaction, it's the outer reaction, it's colored all over the fashion photos, and the world knows the person, and they look at the stars amazingly up in the sky, and they can see exactly, NASA from the moon can exactly see when Ribea star goes to Ribea and communicate, and the world has got all the Googliness of where Ribea educates from, and Ribea has not been introduced to it, but the world already has the information, and the world leaders already know exactly who Ribea Elise is, and Ribea looks at the situation, and I said, but this situation can sometimes be dangerous, because if my daughter and me doesn't realize that the world are talking about us, and then they look at my mama Anna Philander in the directness of her education, and then I went on and I started my Vogue business on social media, and then I learned that my sister Antoinette had thousands and thousands of followers, and then I learned that all of those thousands of followers, that there was so much abuse happening towards my sister Antoinette, so much jealousy, so much hatred on Instagram. My sister told me yesterday I need to go off of social media because social media is so abusive and so oppressive. And then I hold on to my education to say that my opinion is direct, to say that while they are tuned into our family and while they have stepped a little bit closer, I'm direct and I've introduced myself. In next year, it's all year gonna be about self. The season that you have to introduce yourself to a generation of people, a generation of women who have the tendency to learn the strength of family lines and to strike one family line, the other family line out. And without people realizing that sometimes the talk goes about your house and about your children and about your womb and about your pregnancy, and they come and they give you circumstances that are challenging, and you get a miscarriage again and a miscarriage again and a miscarriage again, and you tell yourself, but why was I a year in South Africa? I was waiting for my visa. My daughter was in New Zealand and I was meant to only be there for a month or two, and they made me wait for a year. So what were the world busy with about me? And I learned that the world were trying to oppress me. And I learned that the world had photos of my daughter Kiara, and they were discussing her, and they were discussing my household and my family. And I had to be firm and direct. And when I came back from South Africa in 2020, a Vogue business was already on purpose serving, was already on a Vogue business was on Facebook, on the purpose serving page, and I already started my purpose business. And the world was so tuned in and ready to bash at me and my daughter. And then I had to be the direct mother who said, hello world, this is Ribea, Elise. And sometimes in this world, we have to do exactly that. Sometimes we have to say that with all the circumstances, everyone says, sit quiet and don't move and don't say anything. Otherwise, the world is going to the Ribea, Elise, but the world is already so much tuned in. The world has already had me a year there. What could have happened in the year that I was in South Africa while my daughter was in New Zealand? You know how the world is created, how the process was managed, and then the world said that no one said anything, no one knew Ribea, Elise, and they pretend and they pretend and they pretend. Then Ribea says, and a requirement in that season is the vow to ourselves, the marriage vow. How do we divorce, not from the world itself, but by introducing ourselves to the world in the amazingness of all the colors that we see. Our birth womb education is going on, yes? And our birth womb education is going to continue to be educated concerning the natural womb, right? So we find ourselves in natural womb season. And I'm still going to have to educate on my podcast, right? I'm going to still introduce my season to them, right? So we were busy with the pregnancy education, but I really also want to educate about my Mama Anna Philander's family line in its completeness and the combination of family in our generation. So one thing for our generation to look at one another and say that Malvina is a Humbabani and my family is Humbatani. And it's another thing to say that in the completeness of it, our generation are required to completely respond in the completeness of the womb of humanity. And that sometimes we have to make time to bash people out, but you have to make time sometimes to know why are their surnames anyway, Humbabani. And those times I always say there's a time and a place for everything, and you don't tell yourself that you're against people's opinions, but you don't allow yourself to be oppressed by people's opinions, but you allow yourself to listen in your own pace, in your own season, with directness and to with protective requirement to you and therefore to someone else in their seasons. And that's it with what I wanted to say today, everyone. With the marriage vow, everyone wanted us to talk the amazing colors of it. Embrace your marriages, embrace the amazingness of being with someone. And, I have educated that during the year and during last year on the podcast also and on our Facebook relationship talk pages. If you don't want to listen on YouTube to the videos, please play on Facebook to relationship talk educations, where we really walk the journey with educating the emotional connection, the requirement to know how to respond. And when you know that the marriage vow or the relationship or the connection are somewhat different, then you know how to respond with you and to what your requirement to be protected for you and therefore also to your partner in the marriage and in the relationship. And then you learn to listen to one another, and you learn to listen to embrace exactly how your partner introduced. You also learn to know how to listen to your partner that are being introduced to you. When you learn to know how to listen to your partner that are being introduced to you, then you learn to know how to listen to the amazingness of that connection in the relationship. Emotionally connecting is listening, right? And bonding, right? Making time to embrace the amazingness of relationship. And for everyone, it's an amazing experience. And it's nothing that as a generation, you can't say that you want to paint as glossy as my outfit today. And you can't say that it's nice to paint it very glossy. And it's nice for married couples when they get together to paint it as glossy as Ribea Elise's outfit is today, right? The glossy it is that you don't hide anything that is not fine. If there's things in your relationship that are not fine, and then you really look at the visibility of the color and say, but I really reason and say that in the amazing autumnness of it, and there's the autumn leaves that are falling from the tree, and it looks very nice on the ground, and the color looks nice, and Ribea loves it, and I love looking at the tree like that. And Ribea says, but I love my Vogue greenness with it. You look at a Vogue photo and you say that I love the amazingness of everything about it. And therefore, where the glossiness goes, no disrespect. And if there's disrespect, then know if the partner is really wanting to be with you, or if the partner is not really there for his own other reasons. And that's the amazingness. If the partner, if you know that your partner is not really wanting to be in the relationship, then don't give up on the partner and don't be rude and disrespectful. Oh, I hate rude and disrespectfulness. I've got a very rude and disrespectful husband. He bashes you and he says, oh, this flippin' woman. But he doesn't say the word flippin'. He says this fucking woman. And he does it often. And he's sometimes very irritated. But I have a tendency to really listen to the rudeness that some people can sometimes be very rude and upfront about it. I always say that if you have a husband who's as rude as my husband, it's sometimes nice to have a good laugh after it, and he knows that we have gotten used to that way. But really, sometimes people really, really adores the non-rudeness about it, It's nice to get used to the way that people are saying it, and you shift it up and you're like, man, you're just anyway saying that, and why do you anyway say it like that? And that's how I reason, because why would you anyway say it like that? Or why would you anyway be so rude? Or was it not really necessary? And then it makes you think, so what is happening in the amazingness of all these colors? Because you are not really amazingly, it's 18 years, and it's been amazing, and is it now, circumstances or this or this or that? But the question in those rudeness is, why would you really be so rude? And once you get to think about it, and then you get to notice every rude reaction. It's not that you are pinpointing about it, but I really have to say that once I notice that rudeness, and I tell myself, but that was now not a reason to be rude. And then I listen to the rudeness and I listen to why the rudeness is. Then I'm like, no, that doesn't sound right. And then you reason and you are protective to yourself and you hold on to self. And then you say, oh, it makes me think. What is your reasons for being rude? Is the relationship now really going somewhere totally different? Because who would want to be in a relationship where the relationships are crippled, or where the partners in the relationship find themselves in ways that are abusive to themselves, right? So it is that we learn to listen to how is the response that someone has to you, and that the marriage vow and divorce becomes that when the response are abusive to you or to someone else, and you embrace the glossiness of the relationship and someone else doesn't want to embrace the glossiness of it, then you know when to release, when the divorce is right, or when to separate. And sometimes we do not have to wait for the divorce season, but we have to sometimes learn to know how to listen to the marriage vow in the relationship. Not the marriage vow that someone has written on a piece of paper now. The marriage vow I educated the way I educated our relationship talks. I'm going to do the podcast of relationships to give everyone a clearness on what we've discussed here. The vine and the branches, the glass of red wine, the tasting the grapes itself, when you enjoy a glass of grape juice, and the difference with the red wine that is the same type of grape, but that is manufactured in a different way, the different taste in the relationship, the different seasons that the relationship experiences. I'm going to prepare the podcast and keep it on for our 2023. I'm just working on the relationship podcast, and I'm going to educate us through that. That is the fruits of the relationship on the podcast itself. That is it, everyone. What shoe am I wearing today? I'm wearing the orange shoe, right? It's very nice. I'm not going to do a photo with this today. Probably I'm going to do a photo sometimes during this week. Sometime during this weekend, and I'm going to do this outfit again for this relationship talk discussion that we had just now, and then we're going to share this photo also on our Vogue fashion book. So we do our photos on the Vogue fashion book. Yes, remember the dresses that you wear, listen to the journey that we educate in, because then we do the fashion photo in seasons of that also. And that's where we're at with me, Ribea, Elise, and with my Vogue business. Continue to support us, fund us if you can, and contact us if you have to, that would be an amazing. I'm in Auckland, New Zealand, yes. And actually, when I do location on YouTube, I do America, USA, because that's our generation that we educate in and from and when, wherever we find ourselves at in the world. They have educated amazingly, and we continue to embrace them. Even though they make us angry, we say it on the day, but we try our best to not be too abusive to one another, because that's what our generation has to learn, you know? And that is it for me, Ribea, Elise, and for where I'm at in my season. Have an amazing day further.